UK's largest untapped oil field is going to be developed. Rosebank off Shetland has been granted consent by regulators. It's estimated to contain 500 million barrels of oil. But the decision is a controversial one. Only last month, 50 MPs and peers from all major parties raised concerns that the oil field could produce 200 million tonnes of carbon dioxide. In a moment, we'll be talking to one of the companies involved. But first, Caroline Lucas joins us from the Green Party. Good morning.
Good morning.
Just explain to us the reasons for your opposition.
The reasons for the opposition are obviously to do with the climate emergency that we're facing. This in a year when we've just seen the hottest July on record, when we've seen scientists absolutely distraught about the way in which the ice sheet in Antarctica is melting. And we know that the climate emergency is getting more and more serious. We also know that nearly all of the scientists are telling us there should be no new oil and gas development. And I stress that word new because I'm sure you'll have government ministers come on and say, we can't turn off the taps immediately. No one is suggesting turning off the taps of the oil fields immediately. What we are saying is that locking ourselves into yet more oil and gas at a time when we know we need to be phasing it out is reckless. The International Energy Agency says that no new oil and gas should be taking place if we're to stay within 1.5 degrees.
But we're also at a time, aren't we, when energy security is vital, and we've seen one of the consequences of Russia's war with Ukraine is how valuable it is to have our own sources of energy, and won't that make a big difference if we're able to be having some oil from the North Sea?
Well, I'm so glad you brought that up because that's my second point. And I really hope that you will nail any minister who tries to say this is about energy security, because 90% of Rosebank's reserves are oil, not gas, and they are likely to be exported to Europe and beyond because it's not the sort of oil that we use in our own refineries. Any oil that is sold back to the UK will be sold at the market price, so it won't make the slightest difference to people's energy bills. And so I think we absolutely need to nail this idea that this is about energy security. It is not. Not only that, worse, at a time of a cost of living crisis, the taxpayer in Britain is going to be handing a tax break to the Norwegian energy firm Equinor, who's going to be the main company that's exploiting this field. They're going to be handing a tax break from the public purse worth over £3 billion. And that is the result of a huge loophole in the windfall tax on energy companies, meaning that for every £100 that fossil fuel companies invest in yet more climate-wrecking oil and gas, they can claim £91 back from the Treasury.
Do you think there are likely to be any grounds for a legal challenge, given that there is a legally binding target on net zero?
Well, I certainly hope that's going to be looked at, because the field's operational emissions alone would exceed the UK's entire carbon budget that's been allocated to oil and gas production. That's before you even get to burn the oil and gas that's produced. I'm talking simply about the operational emissions, the emissions caused by getting the stuff out of the seabed. And I really hope that you'll call out Labour on this one as well, because...
Well, Labour have said, haven't they, that they're not going to revoke the licence if it's granted.
Whereas if they were to say now that they would move heaven and earth to try to make sure that this does not go ahead, they could put a freeze on the investment, how positive that investment looks to Equinor right now. They could make a real difference here. And if they are serious about saying that they are going to be climate champions, then they absolutely need to say that they will do everything possible to revoke this licence.
OK, thank you very much indeed, Caroline Lucas. Well, we can talk now to Gilad Myerson, who's executive chairman of Ithaca Energy, which has a 20% stake on the site. Good morning.
Good morning.
You've heard the environmental, well, many arguments there, but let's begin with the environmental arguments. First of all, given the climate emergency, it's wrong to be drilling for new oil.
Yes, at the moment, the UK is a net importer of both oil and gas. At the moment, we are consuming oil, we are consuming gas. And I think the objective is to make sure that the emissions per barrel of that oil and gas is the lowest possible. At the moment, if you look at UK domestic production versus importing, we have the capability to produce oil and gas for our own domestic production and our own energy security at significantly lower CO2 per barrel.
Well, I'd
than
like
importing.
you to address the point made by Caroline Lucas, which is that 90% of the reserves there in Rosebank are oil, which we won't be able to use in our refineries. So this is all going to be exported.
So that's simply incorrect. We will be using the majority of that oil in the UK. So I'm not quite sure where the fact around 90% of the oil is coming. It is going to go outside
So
of the
you're saying
UK.
this oil is not going to be sold on international markets? Is it possible to say it's only going to be sold in the UK? Is that legal?
I wouldn't say it's only going to be in the UK. I think we still have quite a few years until the field will be fully developed. But ultimately, this is a UK field that will be producing both oil and gas for the UK.
What kind of subsidy are you going to be getting from the UK taxpayer to create this development?
So there are the usual capital expenditure allowances that are handed to oil and gas companies in order to develop these fields. We talk about an infrastructure project which is going to be developed over the course of 5 years with continuous investments after that. And this project will be continuously developing over the next 10 to 20 years and producing oil and gas for the UK over that time frame. In order to ensure that we can make those investments, there needs to be a fiscal framework to support such investment.
In the past, you've said that having a windfall tax would deter investment. You've just proved that's not true, haven't you?
Well, at the moment, the fiscal environment in the UK isn't very stable. There have been multiple changes over the last few years. If we look at other countries that are looking to secure energy for their own domestic use, they provide a fiscal framework which is a lot more stable. And
But
we
it
are
hasn't
in
stopped you
constructive
investing, though,
discussions
haven't
with
you?
the
Which is what
government.
you warned when the government brought in the windfall tax, 25% windfall tax on North Sea producers. You said that that was going to act as a disincentive to investment, but here you are going ahead.
No, we've slowed down our investment program quite significantly because of the instability. But I think as an operator in the North Sea, it's very important that we make sure that the investments that we make are for the good of the economy, for the good of the company, for the good of the environment. And if we look at Rosebank specifically, Rosebank is a field that will be developing oil and gas at significantly lower emissions per barrel, will be providing over 1,600 jobs. It's going to be providing a significant amount of tax revenues for the Treasury going forward. And once again, energy security is absolutely a must at the moment in Europe and broadly around the world.
A debate, I'm sure, is going to be continuing during the course of the day. Gilad Myerson from Ithaca Energy, earlier Caroline Lucas, thank you both.